I also want to get to Bradley Beal, though, guys, because The Athletic is reporting he is mulling his future ahead of Thursday's draft. Mark, are the Wizards under pressure to get an answer from Bradley before draft night so they can kind of decide what they're doing here?
Well, I certainly think it would behoove them to know definitively what he wants to do. But I think Bradley has $181 million worth of reasons to hold tight and maybe figure everything out later. I'm told as of this morning, there has been no request, even though there's been a lot of speculation that such could take place. We're a couple days before the draft. Obviously, he would be a very, very coveted piece. You know, you hear his name even around Golden State, where they have a lot of assets to move. But as of right now, and I know he has a really good relationship with general manager Tommy Shepard, and they're pretty open and honest with each other. No trade requests from Beal at this moment.
Yeah, Rachel, and I think the pressure on Washington was right when the season ended, right when they lost in the first round to Philadelphia. And their general manager, Tommy Shepard, came out and said, this is not a run it back type team, right? We're not going to bring back some of the same faces that were on the roster, and they've got 5 or 6 free agents, including players like Robin Lopez, Ish Smith. So for Beal, I think the next couple weeks are going to be critical from the Wizards. It's similar to what we're going to see in Portland, right? As far as the pressure on the organizations to try to build a championship level team. And when you have Beal and Russell Westbrook making $75 to $80 million of your salary, it is going to present a challenge. And as Mark said, with that extension, he's eligible to sign a $180 million extension starting on October 1st. He can get $170 million from another team in the offseason with cap space. So there's not much of an advantage. The advantage comes with that 5 years, $235 million contract that he can sign with Washington, or perhaps if he's traded during the season with his new team.
Yeah, and that's certainly what players on other teams are going to be saying to him. Hey, you can pretty much get almost as much money with us. And we talk about Team USA and the Olympics being such strong recruiting ground. Mark, you mentioned Golden State. I don't know if during training camp, Draymond was in Bradley Beal's ear saying, hey, friend.
You know he was.
Hey.
You know he is.
Hey. Now, Bradley, of course, unfortunately went into the health and safety protocol, so he did not make the trip to Tokyo. He is not with these guys on the trip, but he was with them for 2 weeks in Las Vegas. There's a lot of names that are on a lot of teams that could use a Bradley Beal. So I don't know what conversations were happening behind the scenes. Bobby, I do want to ask you, though, you mentioned some of these contract numbers Bradley is eligible for. As Mark said, he's got 181 million reasons to stay in D.C. But what about from the D.C. side? The last Supermax they gave out was to John Wall. We saw how that worked out. They're still paying Russell Westbrook, who is on a Supermax that he signed in Oklahoma City. Are they really in position? Do they feel like they want to commit that much money to Bradley Beal for these next 5 years if Beal gives them the opportunity to do so?
Yeah, I think if Bradley Beal walked into Tommy Shepard's office today and said, I want to sign that $100 million extension, or let's play it out and I will put my name to 235, I think Tommy would give him a nice handshake agreement. And I think
and a pen.
The Supermax gets, we know the Supermax gets tricky because, Rachel, what happens is that teams are paying usually for the past, not much for what the future is. And when we saw it with Chris Paul, when we get to years 4 and 5 and you're paying a guy $45 to $50 million and maybe the production is not there, it's tough to continue to build a team. But I think if Bradley Beal gives his commitment to Washington, I think they will gladly sign on the dotted line there.
Well, the good thing with Beal is that he's still younger than a lot of people realize he is. He does have 5 years projected of production ahead of him. And it does pain me to say this because it's my hometown, but Washington, D.C. just has not been a free agent destination. So if you've got a guy like Bradley Beal, I got to think you will do everything and pay anything to keep him. Right, Mark?
And Rachel, ironically, just before the pandemic hit, a couple weeks before, I was in San Francisco, the home of the Warriors, having lunch with Bradley Beal, doing an interview with him. And the one thing that he said is he loves Washington. He wants to have a career in Washington. He wants to have his jersey retired in Washington. He wants to be a Wes Unseld type figure with the organization. And perhaps what we just saw from Giannis sticking with it with Milwaukee could give him more motivation to stay in Washington and try to continue his legacy there.
Well, look, we've got the Giannis example on one hand. You've got Draymond Green possibly in your year during training camp. We saw what Draymond Green was able to convince Kevin Durant to do. Yeah, maybe I should. I'm trying to be responsible and say possibly, even though we all know it was pretty likely.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.